Welcome to the Leader's Edge podcast. I'm your host, Chris Kolenda, retired Army colonel, combat leader, author, and speaker. I work with leaders who want to create unshakable business endurance. So tune in as I translate powerful leadership lessons from the battlefield and apply them to your business. From Gettysburg and Normandy to your next biggest business challenges and opportunities, this podcast helps you gain the clarity, confidence, and competitive edge to steer with purpose and win decisively. Ready to sharpen your leadership? Let's dive in. I'm delighted to bring you this episode of the Antietam-Gettysburg podcast. And this is a special episode because I have Cassandra Bald with me, who attended with her company, The Leader's Edge at Antietam and Gettysburg back in October of 2023. And she's also the marketing master who's helping to put these things on. So it's a great fit for both of us. And so, Cass, it's great having you here to discuss the impact that this offsite had for you and the whole team at Lisa Larter Group.
Thanks, Chris. I was excited when you suggested this style of interview for your podcast series. And I feel like it's going to bring a lot of value to people to sort of hear the firsthand stories of what it was like to attend one of your events and the impact that it has had on our business since then, because October 2023 feels like it was so long ago. And in preparation for our conversation, I sort of looking back at the notes that we captured and shared and everything in there, I feel like we've aced it now and we've mastered it and it's just become part of our everyday process. And they were brand new concepts back when you first introduced them to us. And now we use them every day without even thinking about it. And we're better for it. So I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks. So, I mean, how did the whole experience feel to you and the team?
Honestly, it was sort of a one-of-a-kind situation. I've been to conferences and trainings and, I've done the whole sit at a desk and do a bunch of modules that you're yawning through. And I've done the thing where you sit in, an audience and somebody is just talking at you. And what I find with those situations is I leave them and I have a notebook of some scribbled down notes, but I'm not feeling energized. And it's probably about a week later that I've sort of forgotten all about it because I just was not that invested, I suppose. It just didn't feel like that kind of learning never felt super effective for me. So when I was told by our visionary leader, our CEO, Lisa Larter, that she was going to invest in some leadership training for us, and it would be standing at the historical site of a legitimate battlefield, and we would be learning through storytelling and not only just learning about the past, but learning how those historical moments translate to present day and real things that we are experiencing in business and with our team and as leaders trying to lead people and gain buy-in and, respond to the changing market of our business and all of that. I didn't know what to think at first, but I can honestly say being there and doing all of that was a complete 180 from the previous leadership training I've experienced. So not having somebody talking at me and not sitting behind a desk doing boring modules, but rather having Chris, you in the field, telling the story, hearing what we are relaying to you and how we are personally relating to these stories. And then you with your whiteboard and drawing actual visual models that solve a problem that we're experiencing. It was pretty magical and surreal experience, to say the least.
Is there, well, I appreciate that. It was awesome.
Of course.
And so are there any examples that kind of come to mind right away from 2 years ago?
I mean, where do I start? There's dozens. So first of all, for those of you that are listening to audio only, I'm about to hold up a notebook. It's a little yellow notebook that is filled with scribbles and notes, and I've drawn pictures. So if you're watching the video, you can likely see the pictures that I've drawn, copying down Chris's visual models so that I could later study them. And to this day, there are dozens of things in this notebook that I'll refer back to. And, um, dozens of things that I use daily right now. So, one of the reasons that we first decided to do this work with Chris is because we're a growing team and our business is growing. And we started with, Lisa was a solopreneur, and then she has grown the team to have, a dozen or so people on it, with a leadership team of, I think at the time of our leadership training, there was about 5 of us. And there's something that she always says that explains really nicely why we decided to do this training. And it's that what got you here won't get you there. What got you here won't get you to the next level. So she knew that we needed additional training. She knew that we needed to up-level our thinking and up-level our leadership skill. And she also always says, and this might be a quote from somebody else, I actually don't know, but she always says, you can't read the label from inside the jar. You can't see the label on the outside of the jar from inside the jar. And basically it means you don't know what you don't know. And it's highly valuable to hire a coach or an instructor or a trainer that can help you to take it to the next level. And so, yeah, one of the things that we were struggling with is just that we were, we had all of this new work, these new clients, these larger projects, and our processes weren't like sticking up to it. And our team wasn't on the same page, and we were struggling to have people meet expectations. And so the first example that I'll share of what we learned doing this Antietam-Gettysburg leadership experience was the need for shared language in order to generate and create buy-in. So we worked with Chris, Chris, we worked with you to kind of map out a plan for how we were going to create new shared core values for our team, because the ones we had been working with were probably like 8 to 10 years old, and the people who created them, they created them for a different business than we were today. So that was the first thing that you helped us do, is map out that plan. And later, after the event, we were able to get together as a team and go through that exercise and build out what I am super proud of now is what we call our the Godaxi grit. So, I work for Lisa Larter and the Lisa Larter Group, and our marketing agency is called Godaxi. So we call it the Godaxi grit. And grit stands for growth, responsibility, intentionality, and teamwork. And then under each of those 4 things, we have kind of defined what that language means so that we could all be on the same page and we could all have buy-in for what good looks like, and what the expectation of being a part of this team actually is. And we couldn't have done that without the conversations that we had during this leadership experience.
And what was the visual model that that comes to mind when you think of?
It's the ABCs, right? Is that the right one? That's the one that I think of. The buy-in, accountability, and clarity, or am I thinking of the wrong one?
Yeah. Well, we spent a lot of time on the ABCs: accountability, buy-in, and clarity. And when it came to clarity, and we were talking about values, we were talking about what does right look like, and what's outside. What does wrong look like, so people can so you actually people know they can see the behavior that are either in a good place or in a not so good place.
Yeah. And as part of that conversation, I think we also talked about the pressure gauge visual.
Yeah.
Another thing that another thing that we were struggling with, and even me particularly, I'm sure a lot of, young professionals or even experienced professionals who are high performers tend to put a lot of pressure on themselves, and it's not always necessary, and it's definitely not the best way to get to make progress and get as much done as possible. So we talked about the difference between acceptable versus awesome, and how sometimes we can set an expectation with our team using this sort of pressure gauge visual as to whether or not a task needs to be, all the way at the far end green. It has to be awesome. You have to go above and beyond for the client. You have to go above and beyond for the project. Or if something could be in the greenish yellow, moderate, acceptable range. And that visual that you shared with us not only helped personally to kind of take the pressure off of myself a little bit, because now I have that shared understanding with my coworkers, my colleagues, and my team that I'm leading. But it also really helped when we were having problems with poor performers. And it helped us to understand, is this team member constantly in the red of this pressure gauge? And how long can they be in the red of that pressure gauge before we need to do something about it?
Yeah, it's one of my, of course, favorite visual models. And so if you can imagine, if you're watching this, you can see me draw it. And if you are listening to it, you can imagine the pressure gauge in your vehicle. And a very simple version of the pressure gauge is you've got three colors. You've got a yellow color, which essentially means the pressure's too low. And something's not functioning quite right. You've got a red, which means it's way too high, about ready to blow a gasket. And then in the center is your green, and that's just right. It's exactly where you want to be. And so for any value, and I remember doing this with y'all out there, we take a given value, treat each other with respect as an example, and we'd say, okay, well, what does just right look like? What are the specific behaviors that we expect in terms of how we treat each other? And so we go through that, and then what is too low look like not enough effort? And so we define some of those behaviors and put them in the yellow. There we go. And put them in the yellow. And then we did the same thing with too high. What does out of control look like? And then what you've had there is a way for everybody to say, hey, this is exactly what we expect, and this is what's out of bounds. And so accountability then becomes so much easier, because you got it there, and ideally you've co-created it with your team, so they helped you put this thing together.
I love it. And yeah, when you break it down that way, it makes so much sense. And being able to share that visual with your team so that, it's not a leader at the top sort of shouting things down, but rather working through it as a group and having that shared understanding. It's been helpful to have not just that visual model, but any of your visual model. The other one that I love is the comfort zone versus chaos zone visual model.
Yeah.
And that one has really stuck with me. And that's actually one that I've never had to look back at my notebook for, because it's so ingrained in my brain, because it was such a big aha moment for me as somebody who, was leading some more junior employees and, training them up and working with them to be able to take on new tasks. And I was just often struggling with why, we were having these situations where we were often maybe butting heads, or they were telling me that, they were overwhelmed or they had too much on their plate, when I could see in my, utilization tracker that they shouldn't have too much work on their plate. And I was so confused about that for a really long time. And when you broke down the chaos zone, or I guess the comfort zone, the chaos zone through the zone of transformation, that just like made it all make sense for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So I remember we talked about the pressure gauge. I believe it was on the Gettysburg battlefield, because we're talking about a specific situation. Talked about a specific situation about accountability on day one of Gettysburg, and then that got us into the pressure gauge visual model, which we drew right there on the whiteboard on the ground, and gave you and you worked through an example of that, and then you worked through more later. This particular one that you're talking about leader growth is one of the conversations we had at Antietam, and it was about the Union General McClellan not being willing to get out of his comfort zone. So that visual model that you're describing looks a bit like this. So it's a chart that has will on the north-south and skill on the east-west. And that intersection of will and skill is going to look something like this. And inside of that, you typically have your comfort zone. And you're pretty happy inside the comfort zone. And naturally you're very, very comfortable. Like McClellan on the ground was very comfortable doing, he was very comfortable with focusing like in the weeds on details. He was very comfortable with micromanaging everything, even though he didn't do it well. That was his comfort zone. And it's kind of like your body armor. You put, you put on body armor. A lobster creates a shell, and the lobster can't grow while that shell is like still on. So they have to molt. They have to ditch the shell, grow, and then regrow the shell. So in this case, so you've got your comfort zone. Oftentimes people know where they want to get, which is your transformation zone. So you know where you want to be. In this case, McClellan wanted to defeat Lee's army and potentially end the Civil War. But between the comfort zone and the transformation zone is, you might call the chaos zone. I'll just make this in yellow. The chaos zone, or the zone of discomfort. And inside the zone of discomfort, of course, you have obstacles in your way. You have frenemies who are trying to prevent you from doing that. You have this fear that in the discomfort zone is where I am going to fall on my face in front of everybody. And so people get, like McClellan, get very afraid to get out their comfort zone. And so we will actually reinforce our armor to stay in the comfort zone. And what you need, and McClellan didn't have, you need confidence to move through the chaos and discomfort zone. You need a way through it. So you need a bridge, a guide that's going to get you through that zone of discomfort. So show you the way and also give you the support. It's like a bridge with the rails on it. Give you the support, so you can make it across and not feel like you're gonna fall off the cliff, and then it gets you into the transformation zone. And then something very special happens when you get to the transformation zone. You recognize that, oh, there's even greater awesomeness beyond that. This is supposed to be a very happy, the next transformation zone. So there's a level of awesomeness, even beyond that you wouldn't recognize had you not gone through it the first time. And that's another one of the visual models. Now, fortunately, you don't have to anymore take notes in your own notebook, because everybody who goes on these offsites gets my book of visual models, which is actually quite cool. So, you get, you'll see 3-circle Venn diagrams, more 3-circle Venn diagrams. You'll see double axis charts and other sorts of things. So you got the entire arsenal of visual models here with you. And of course I continue updating those, all the time. So you all continue improving what you're doing at Lisa Larter Group. I continue to improve what I'm doing, on these events. So what has, one of the things that strikes me that, if a picture's worth 1,000 words, a good visual model is worth 1,000 pictures. And if you can create an emotional connection to that visual model by being in like these extraordinary places with people who matter to you and talking about things that matter to you, then that's worth 1,000 insights delivered by PowerPoint or in some sort of
Honestly, if I could just reiterate, and for the people who are listening in, if you think reading a book about this history is interesting, and then you think hearing Chris talk about the stories and how they connect to the visual model on this podcast is even more interesting, the feeling, honestly, like full body chill that you get standing where these things actually happened, while Chris is an incredible storyteller and bringing you through, in detail and, very, visually driven language that just like illustrates the story for you in real time, is one of the most inspiring events and situations that you can be in. And so it's one thing for Chris to tell you, oh yeah, you'll create this emotional connection between being there and the visual models. But I'm telling you genuinely, it truly is that incredible of an experience. And I feel like I remember all those visual models and I use them, and they have become part of my daily practice because I have that connection to them now. It's not just something that I learned on a webinar. It's something that is part of my life now, because I lived that. I didn't just watch it, I lived it.
Yeah. So the emotional connection, when you couple emotional connection and those aha moments, it sticks with you. You may have an aha moment in a webinar or in a hotel room or whatever, but there's no emotional connection. And so it doesn't necessarily stick with you. Here, when you have that, when you add the knowledge, the visual model, and the emotional connection, it like sticks with you, and which allows you to apply it every day instead of forget about it.
Absolutely.
And so how has this affected the company? What's been the impact on the company?
So really, if I think back to where we were in 2023 in comparison to where we are now, first I'll speak for myself personally. I've worked for this company for 5 years total. Actually, as of a few days ago, 5 years. And I personally have gone through different seasons in the company, and my job titles have reflected that as well. But even just the seasons I've gone through since becoming a manager and being put into this position where I'm leading people and I have team members that are relying on me to guide them and point them in the right direction. The seasons that I have personally gone through, the biggest change has been pre Antietam-Gettysburg and post Antietam-Gettysburg. And I feel like I am more equipped and more confident. And I feel like I just have this newfound sense of like, I can do this. Um, and I almost feel like a little bit less like an imposter, if that makes sense. Like prior to Antietam-Gettysburg, I had read leadership books. I said I had done the training, I had done the modules, sat in a room and had somebody talk at me. And I still felt a little bit like that person that was talking at me, they're the leader. And I'm just somebody who's trying to do what they're doing. And since Antietam-Gettysburg, I feel now like I genuinely know the language to use. I know the visual models I can share. I know I have Chris who I can rely on. I'm sure I've sent him emails and he's done follow-up meetings with us where I'm asking additional questions about, my leadership. And I feel like I have the biggest season change for me has been through doing that event. And then as a bigger picture, as a company, we, communicate better. We have fewer issues where we are either working over top of each other or butting heads about something. We're having more collaboration meetings or coordination meetings where we've improved the structure of our weekly level 10 meeting and our same page meetings. We have our team members doing more work and doing it energetically than they ever would before. They're more willing to take on new challenges and they're more willing to try new things than they ever were before. And all of that has meant we can take on more business and do better work for our client, which has ultimately, in the long run, resulted in an upward trajectory for our business. And as somebody who works for a marketing agency, the sort of the fact that AI right now has been blowing up has posed a ton of additional challenges for us. And I don't think we were thinking about this when we first participated in this leadership event back in 2023. While AI was around then and people were using it, it wasn't as big as it is now, and it didn't pose as much of a threat as it does now. But one of the things that we talked about with Chris at that event was the need for rainy day planning for times of disruption. And we did that. And as a result, we've been able to transition our company from the same old marketing agency that is just closing their eyes, crossing their fingers and toes and hoping they continue to get clients, when a lot of businesses today are thinking they can do their marketing in-house by using AI. And now we've transitioned and we are doing AI-driven marketing for people. And that idea and that our ability to quickly adapt with the changing market is because we sort of talked about having those rainy day plans for disruptive things. And that was a conversation we had at the leadership training.
Yeah, we had if I remember correctly, we had it on a couple of different occasions. One was at the at Canon at Antietam. We were talking about the rifling as innovation, and then AI was one of the innovation trends that we discussed. And then we discussed the taking action visual model at Gettysburg, where Lee was constantly in downstream thinking. He was always reacting to problems, so always in corrective and remedial action, instead of being in the upstream thinking, where he's able to not only engage in preventive action, but also to look at trends and to look at the future and then create and exploit opportunities. And that's exactly what y'all are doing with AI. And I find it extraordinary to watch y'all doing that.
Thanks. It's definitely an exciting time, that's for sure.
Do you have to be a military history expert to get value from this experience?
Not at all. And I will say that I probably knew the least amount about US military history out of any of the people that attended this event on our team because I'm Canadian. So I actually, I didn't even learn any of that stuff in high school. So it was all new to me. And something that I found really helpful, Chris, was the book that you recommended we read. There was 2 of them. And, we as a team committed to reading them both leading up to the event so that as you got talking and as you were telling stories, we already had a basic understanding of the stories. The one thing that I found was helpful for me was like creating a little cheat sheet of who each person was, what their character traits were, and what their like key roles in history were, because all the names do get a little bit confusing. But to answer your question, absolutely not. You don't have to be an expert in it at all, and you don't have to know anything at all because I didn't going into this experience.
How does it differ from a sort of battlefield tour?
I think what makes this really special is your ability to adapt every single every single historical event to help explain what we are going through and experiencing and, provide relevant and actionable advice to us. So, for example, we're standing in one place. Did we already talk about the bridge? What was the bridge that we?
Burnside's Bridge.
Yeah, Burnside's Bridge. So say we're standing there, and you might have sort of an idea of how you want to lead the conversation, and you start by telling the story. And as we get talking, you say something, and I say, I feel like that is happening to us right now, right? Like I feel this, and I make that little connection. And what you do wonderfully is you pick up on that and you guide the conversation from there in a way that is so specific to what we are actually going through. And you tie in what we're going through to the story and bring in the visual models. So it's not, a tour that, may or may not apply to me. It is 100% every time you attend this, every single day, every single stop on the trip, it is going to be highly targeted at what you are going through. And Chris, I just think it's because you're really talented at picking up on those things and you're talented at tying it all together. But you're learning the history and you're getting these actionable insights that you can actually do something with.
If you were speaking with a CEO who is considering doing this as a company offsite, what advice would you give them?
I think as a CEO, you have an opportunity to, be a little bit disruptive yourself in terms of how you lead your team. And sometimes the thing that's going to work the best is not the thing that everyone else is doing. So everyone else is already reading the leadership books. Every other team, has the same information you have. Everyone else is, doing the online programs and they all have the same information you have. What might give you and your leadership team the competitive edge is doing something that not a lot of other people are doing and doing this sort of once in a lifetime, highly memorable, extremely valuable team building event that you and your leadership team will never, ever forget. It's not just about, addressing challenges in your business and improving your leadership as a team. It's also about how close you can become with your fellow leaders by experiencing something like this together. Uh, Maybe other events will have an icebreaker here or there. Something that Chris does that is the smallest thing but makes a huge difference is some, I guess I call them dinner table conversations, where it's almost an icebreaker question, but the question is so thoughtful and it's coming off of a day filled with like really big ideas and bold insight. And the sort of bond that's created through that is different than what you'll get in any other sort of leadership training experience. So I could probably talk about this for an hour, all the different reasons that you should consider doing this. And at the end of the day, it really is just a highly valuable and memorable experience to go through.
All right. Cassandra Bald, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your experiences on the event. And you and the whole company are an absolute joy to work with.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Happy to have participated in this conversation. And I can't wait to listen to it and all the other episodes.
Thanks for tuning in to the Leaders Edge podcast. If you found today's episode valuable, please be sure to subscribe and leave a review because it helps more leaders like you find their edge. Do you want to take these lessons further? Well, you can visit my website, chriskolenda.com, for resources, support, and adventure offsites that build unbeatable positioning, help you create an unstoppable workforce, and give you the tools for unwavering inspiration. Until next time, stay decisive, stay inspired, and keep leading from the front.